All right. I think we're live.
We live?
Yeah, we're live, man. It's been a long time
That's
coming.
nice. This is like the first time I do this, man. Like actually going live on YouTube. We've done a little bit of coaching, like a lot of coaching in the past, but it is live coaching, right? Like we do it through Zoom, but never been live on YouTube like this. I've done a few. I'm sure you've done a few. Commentating the final tables and stuff like that, but I haven't really done like a live YouTube like this. Congrats, man, for finally opening the channel.
Thanks. Yeah, like I said, it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad that we're finally here. And hopefully this works, and it's not all just for nothing. Oh, we got Muskan in the chat. Fingers crossed. Need. Oh, sorry, good, please. Yeah. So Muskan is a former student of ours, and she actually has her own channel, I believe, or her own podcast. I was on her podcast a few months ago. Uh, she's from India, so huge following in the Indian market. Shout out to all our Indian followers.
How you
uh,
doing, Muskan?
yeah, it's a slight delay, I believe. But anyway, yeah. So what are you up to, man? Let everyone know.
Well, I'm actually here at the Encore in Vegas. I came out here for the big tournament at the Win. I'm doing a couple courses right now, like in Spanish. I'm in the middle of a few courses, but I couldn't really sit this one out. I feel like this is like this year's version of like the main event. It's around the same time, and yeah, I think it'll be like big numbers. I think it'll be a great spot, and yeah, I really like to play live poker, so made sure I came for this one, man. So probably playing tomorrow since we're doing this now. I don't really want to start late, but yeah, I think it'll be big numbers, man. Yesterday I had a satellite and had like 700 people, so that's a really good sign.
For sure. It's the 10K. What is it? 10K, 10 million? 10K, 5 million guarantee?
10K 10 million guaranteed, yeah.
Oh,
So they're
man.
guaranteeing 1,000 people field. That's pretty strong.
That's pretty strong in the middle of a pandemic, or I guess it's almost or finally coming to an end, at least for you guys.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that's like it's really weird, man, because depending on who I talk to, it's like everybody's living like a different reality, man. Like that's actually why I left Colombia. I was living in Colombia. I lived part time between Colombia, Miami, Panama, but I was mostly in Colombia, and then yeah, the situation just got really rough with like COVID and the cases and restrictions. So I came to the States, so that's what I mean, right? Like in Colombia, everybody's like super freaked out, like super cautious. Um, then you come to Miami and Vegas, nobody's wearing a mask. It's like then there's many countries in between. So it's just like yeah, it's an interesting time, man, all around. It's just been kind of crazy, man.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think we could see the light now, in the little bit of darkness that we've been going through. I don't know if we could call it like darkness, but yeah, it's been a tough time to go through. So, but yeah, it's been interesting, man. But out here, yeah, it seems like people are not too caring about the COVID stuff.
no, for sure. Like it's funny. I speak to you, and it's like we've been living completely different lives for the last 15 months or whatever. Where I've been completely locked up here in London for most of it, and haven't been able really to go anywhere, and definitely haven't played any live poker or even like thought about playing live poker. So I've been strictly focused on the online, and I know you've been traveling like quite a bit, like at least across America, and playing all sorts of tournaments, live tournaments, and you were playing in the booths and with the masks and all of that stuff. What was that? What was live poker like during the pandemic?
Yeah, I didn't really like it. When it started coming back, I didn't like it at all. It was like everybody wearing masks, the whole plexiglass thing. But it was still better for me personally than like playing online. So yeah, it was like pretty weird. Obviously, you go from like what a normal poker game is supposed to look like to now having plexiglass and all these restrictions, and yeah, I felt like people were kind of like different, you know, in a way where they felt kind of like protected by the glass, and I felt like I don't know, it was a different vibe at the table, you know, it was a completely different vibe. But now it's gotten like pretty much back to normal, you know. I mean, some people wear masks, some people not, but no plexiglass, and yeah, to be honest, I think we're experiencing like I think everybody's saying this, but I agree with it. It's like a poker boom, man. Like people are like we're itching to play, man. So now that like conditions are okay to for the game to come back, yeah, people are really enjoying it, man. Like the numbers are bigger than ever, and I see a lot of new faces, man. Which back in the day, you would see the same people every time, and now it's like a lot of people that you don't even know who they are. Like a bunch of new faces that probably picked up poker during the pandemic, or took it to like a next level. So, yeah, I see poker heading into like a nice direction, man. I see it kind of booming for at least, I would say like at least a couple of years. I think.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. And I agree. I think online poker and live poker are in two different worlds right now where I don't see a bright future for online poker, but I think live poker still has a lot of potential and room to grow, um, especially if it's entering new markets. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while, but it seems like America is like slowly but surely starting to come back after Black Friday and like all that mess, and like banning online poker is obviously a huge setback for both live and online, because one, as a tournament operator or a poker operator, you can't run online satellites, which is a big part of live poker and like what sort of feeds the fields, because not everyone, or most people can't afford to put up the buy-in for a live tournament, and like they're really expensive. And also you're not getting any new players like that. Like, I don't know about you, but like the way I started, I was started playing online, but then I quickly shifted towards live satellites, or online satellites to live events rather, because my biggest dream was to play in one of these live tournaments, and online tournaments was like the only way that I could realistically do that, because I didn't want to play just in Sweden. I wanted to go abroad. I wanted to travel. I wanted to go to Vegas. I wanted to go play the EPTs and all that stuff. So my only option was to play online satellites, and that's sort of how I started. I got lucky, and I banked a few and got out on the live tour and had some success there early on, which like boosted my bankroll, my confidence, my network, like everything just worked out during that period. So I'm very grateful for online poker, but like unfortunately, because of all these regulations, I don't see a very bright future, and it's a shame. But at least live poker
No,
seems to be doing well.
yeah, I think online poker is like a great. I see it as a tool, man. I think it's an amazing tool to kind of work on your game, right, and to face like very strong competition at like very like all types of levels, right? Like you play a $50 buy-in online, and you're probably gonna have a tougher table like towards the end than you might have in this 10K, literally, So it's like it's that much of a difference. So I just see it as a tool, but I think as far as like playing online as a living for a living, or playing online as a lifestyle, I think, yeah, I don't think it has a bright future. I think that it's not too attractive for recreationals. I think that as technology advances, I think it's kind of killing the game, because it's kind of evolving with technology, and it's really negative, because people are using the real-time assistants, the bots, the this, the that. So it's not like, doesn't seem like a safe environment for somebody like wanting to get into the game. It's not too attractive at all. But now you go into the live scene, you see a bunch of new faces. You see that it's actually possible to win, because you're facing a lot of weaker competition too. And I think that live is where like the real poker is being played. I mean, maybe like I'm being a bit results oriented, but I don't think so. I just think that it's like brain on brain battle. It's like no tools available. Like let's go to war with what we got available right now. Which is our brain, and the little details that we have presently available. So I think that's where the beauty of live poker really comes from. And the emotional side of things, and like the body language, like being able to socialize. I don't like, for me, it's just way more attractive. from all sorts of angles, you know. So yeah, I think really enjoying and really grateful of the fact that it's coming back, and I wasn't sure if it was gonna come back strong, if it was gonna come back, you know, super weak, and it looks like it's coming back like stronger than ever. So for that, I'm very grateful being a live player myself, you know.
Yeah, it's not just the regulations that's an issue with online, right? It's like you say, it's there's softwares out there that could potentially assist you in real time, and you don't know what's going on behind someone's screen and who you're playing against. So there's definitely a unique element to live poker, and I think it's pretty clear that a lot of people share your feelings towards it. They prefer to play live poker over online poker for many reasons. Like it's just not enjoyable for them. Um, so what's your prediction for this year's WSOP? Do you think it's going to be the biggest one so far, or do you think it's going to drop in numbers? Given that it's we're still, I mean, we don't really know what the pandemic situation will look like by then. I mean, I'm sure it will be fine in Vegas, but also, of course, it depends on the rest of the world if we'll be able to travel there. I know Australia, for example, like they're lacking in India, they're lacking behind. Brazil is lacking behind on the vaccination process. So I think they're going to be not locked down, maybe, but they're going to be restricted with their traveling. So I think that could hurt the numbers. But at the same time, like you say, the numbers in America is better than ever. So who knows? But what's your prediction there?
Yeah, I think like the smaller events, you know, like the smaller buying events, I think that yeah, they're probably gonna be as big as ever for sure. And you know, in a perfect world where like everything keeps getting better as it is right now, the conditionings keep improving in all the countries, could potentially yes be the biggest WSOP ever for sure. Um, but you know, like you said, I mean, these things could change from one day to the next, man. You know, like. Uh, it's very unpredictable right now, even though we see like what it probably will look like is it's a little bit unpredictable right now. But yeah, if things keep trending the way they are, yes, I think it'll be, if not the biggest, very close to the biggest ever.
Yeah, I think so too. But I mean, maybe I'm over
So it
optimistic.
will be it will be it will be a good one to choose to go, you know, back to back with, not back to back, but to choose to be a two-time champion with. So maybe you want to put that into your, you know,
I don't
to
know.
the back of your brain.
Did it guarantee 10 million for the winner this year?
Uh, I'm not sure, but if you win 10 million and then you win 8.4, like I don't think you'll be
Nah,
too
that
upset.
I
I
don't
mean,
get it. I don't get out of bed for less than that. Anyway, live poker is great, but today we're gonna actually break down some online poker. I mean, mostly because it's a lot more convenient to have it on the screen. But in the future, we'll definitely look at some live coverage as well, because I think it's a lot of fun to break down, especially like old school hands, like maybe some hands that both me or Farid have played in the past. That's been at a final table where there's been a lot of money at stake or a lot of pressure, or maybe we completely fucked up a spot and we can laugh about it and like say what we would do today. But anyway, so today we're gonna break down some key hands from a recent 5K scoop tournament that I played a few months ago. And I made a pretty deep run in this tournament. You can see like the blinds are already pretty high. I think, uh, if I'm not mistaken, I think we started with 100K. So yeah, I honestly can't remember if what the bubble situation and like how deep we are at the current time. But I think for the sake of matter, I think it's sort of irrelevant because these hands, like with the concepts that we'll discuss, um, doesn't really affect that too much in these scenarios. Um, so yeah,
get it going.
let's get into the action. I think Muskan asked whose hand history we're breaking down. So we're breaking down my hand history. For those of you who don't know, this is my online screen name. It's one I picked 20 years ago when I was creating my first screen name on PokerStars, and it's, I don't know if you It's not rocket science, but if you haven't figured it out yet, it's my last name backwards and an M for Martin. So there you go. The secret is out. This is me. And I'm stuck with the screen name for the rest of my life because you can't change screen names online. And I think that's one of the benefits of at least some sort of game integrity on the major sites, that if you get to know someone's screen name, you know who you're playing with. So it's not a guessing game anymore. And the sites are actually pretty
But
good at policing this sort of stuff.
I think that PokerStars is very good at it. I think some of the other sites are maybe not as good as PokerStars is.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, go ahead.
No affiliation, by the way. Like PokerStars has the highest rake out there, so just be aware of that. Anyway, yeah, pretty clear defend. I don't think there's any arguments about that. So I like to lead here, and I'm doing this for a few reasons. And the main reason is that we have a pretty significant range and not an advantage, meaning that this board connects a lot better with our range here from the big blind than any of our opponents' ranges. So we're facing an under the gun open, but it's not really an under the gun open because it's only 6 players at the table. So if I'm not mistaken, this is actually kind of deep, like close to the final table. So it brings a little bit extra, like brings a little added dynamic of people playing maybe a little bit more cautiously, because obviously now we're close to the final table. Our immediate goal should be to make the final table and try to ladder up from there and then win the tournament. But that's not the main reason why I lead here. So I lead here because I have a lot more sixes in my range. I have pocket fours, which they probably have, but maybe not always. And by betting here, I can actually fold out a lot of hands that currently has us dominated. So hands like Ace Jack, King Jack. So the only downside of betting, is that we're building a pot versus a flush draw. Probably a better flush draw because they don't have that many worse flush draws in their range, if any. They're not opening. NASA isn't opening 6-7 or 7-8 of hearts here. At least I wouldn't think so. Like this close to the final table, and you lose. Motherfucker isn't flatting that in the cutoff, especially with 2 reshoving stacks on the button and in the small blind. So that's just like more arguments for donking or leading here, in my opinion. What do you say, Farid? Do you like to lead here, or do you rather check and see what happens?
No, I definitely like the lead. I definitely like the lead. I think that basically don't need to get too deep into it. I think you covered most of the reasons why we lead here, right? But there is something to point out that I rather lead something like, for example, if it comes 4, 5, 6 and 2 hearts, right? I think that that's like a bit of a better texture that I lead. I find myself personally leading more often with this type of hand, because now I feel like you get to fold out those ace highs that you were talking about pretty much every time with no resistance, right? I think that on 6-6-4, I think that your lead is very credible. I don't think that they're gonna get too out of line versus you, but I do think they'll float wider than you, or they'll continue wider than like a different texture, like what I'm saying, right? Like the 4-5-6 type of texture. But that being said, I think that it's still a perfectly fine lead. I think that we're targeting exactly what we're targeting. I think that we both agree that, the most natural pairs, like those middle pairs, are not folding on this texture or on the one that I mentioned. It's just that I choose the other one because, like I said, I think that those ace highs you're getting a lot more folds out of, right? I also think that in general, a 6 kind of check raises a lot here, so there's something to say to that, right? Too, but yeah, I think I love leading, some percentage of the time for sure, So yeah, there's nothing to say that I wouldn't call it a mistake at all. I'm saying me personally, in general, I probably lead something like 30% here, for example. But if it was a 4, 5, 6 two hearts, I probably lead something like 75%, right? But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that or what your thoughts are about that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would never say that it's a mistake to do either of those two options. I mean, we have uh, Jack High with a flush draw, like neither can be a mistake. It would be a mistake if we don't have the range advantage if the flop was three high cards, for example. I mean, if it was, so we'll connect with our hand anyway. But you know, if it wasn't a favorable situation. But here in this spot, like we have so many more sixes than both of these guys. Like if we think about it, like Nasa, he only has ace six suited. You know, I don't think he opened king six suited, even like from the low jack. Given that it is six max, sure he's under the gun, but it's or sorry, he's in the low jack. But since it's six max, six handed, and we're kind of close to the final table, with six players at the table, there's less antes in play, which changes his or should change his opening range quite drastically because with less antes in place, there's less money to, there's less chips to steal, and therefore he should open quite a lot tighter than if it was a regular eight-handed or nine-handed low jack open race. So
Yeah, and I also think that based on his specific situation, is it's not too attractive to open here very wide. He has a couple of stacks behind him that could reshove pretty light, right? He has you in the big lane who has him covered by a lot. I think that, yeah, I think he's gonna open like pretty transparent here. Like I don't think he's gonna get too out of line, and yeah, I think that if he's way deeper, he could have something like 6, 7 suited maybe. But with this depth and in this specific situation, I think that you're right. I think that he has very little sixes. And probably the same goes for you lose motherfucker. I think that he doesn't have many sixes himself.
no, exactly. I think he barely has any sixes, right? Like, is he flatting ace six suited here? Like, maybe sometimes, but I also think he three bets that combo quite a bit. And yeah, going back to what you were saying, that NASA shouldn't be opening too wide here. Yeah, I mean the low jack or sorry, the hijack, Kete. You can pronounce this better than me. Kete Crio.
Get the Crio, yeah,
Kete
get the
Crio. Ah,
Crio.
that's pretty good,
It,
huh?
it means like,
What does it mean?
well, like sometimes when you're like mad in Spanish in some countries, some of them say like, tu madre que te crió, like your mother that raised you, like she should have raised you better, right? So he's kind of like being joking around with it. I'm assuming, right? But that's a pretty funny screen name though.
It's funny,
Um,
especially yeah, especially since the guy to his left is his screen name is you lose motherfucker.
yeah, exactly.
Um,
So yeah, so coming from that angle, like it's zero attractive because he has to call his shove every time. Yeah, I think there's not much to say about that. I think we both agree that he's opening pretty tight here, pretty transparent. And I think the main takeaways here, Martin, are that if we want to have a leading range with that, which I think that we should start experimenting a lot more than we probably are right now, we need to make sure that what you're saying, that we're clear on we're attacking, and that we have a clear range advantage, right? And that's where the leading strategy starts becoming a lot more efficient, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think because this is a pretty scary board for both of their ranges, I think they're gonna play a lot more passive than under normal circumstances. So when we do have a six, we kind of want to force more money in the pot. So I think that's also a reason, or I mean, that was a reason why I elected to lead here, because I could see myself leading with a lot of sixes and a lot of strong stuff, and then yeah, taking the initiative in the pot rather than check calling or check racing, and being in a kind of awkward spot. All right, so NASA folds and you lose calls, and the flop pretty bricky, at first glance at least, and it's definitely super brick for his range. Like doesn't really improve him at all. Like he doesn't have 5-3 obviously, 5-3 suited or even pocket deuces. So it doesn't improve him at all. If he has a five, like pocket fives, he has a pretty clear turn call now because he has the added equity with the gut shot. But that's pretty much it in terms of fives that he can have, right? Like what other fives would he call with here? Pre-flop
Yeah, maybe
and
like
low jack.
I would say maybe like the random, ace five of diamonds that didn't, three bet pre and decided to float the flop. Ace five of hearts, is pretty natural call here. And then besides that, like you're saying, besides those two and like maybe fives, I don't think there's many fives at all. But I do think that you might have 5-3 suited like a decent percentage of the time. So for that reason, it's still obviously a way better card for us than it is for him. So if we decide to lead the flop, I think that we wanna kind of second barrel this. I would say close to 100% of the time.
Yeah, I agree. And there's not really many better alternatives, right? Like, because if we start checking here and he bets, like, then what do we do? Do we check call? Do we check raise? Stacks are kind of awkward for that, and he shouldn't have that many floats um, on the flop. So I think it's better to just keep the initiative in the pot and sort of decide our prize, and also fold out some of his floats and his backdoor flush draw. So like if he had a hand like ace jack of diamonds, for example, like he would always call that on the flop because all these backdoor flush draw combos have really good equity with that backdoor. But then, so when the backdoor misses and we don't have the backdoor ourselves, it's usually a very good spot to continue to bet, just to fold out that range. So I don't think we'll generate that many folds by betting here, other than those backdoor diamond combos. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Maybe, I mean, it's possible that he would be sticky with like ace queen and ace jack on the flop and float that. Obviously, those would fold as well. So I think pretty mandatory double barrel here. So now the big question: do we triple barrel here or do we give up? So I think the first thing we want to ask ourselves is obviously how likely are we to generate folds by betting here, and what's our opponent's weakest holding at this point. So we know what it would look like on the flop after he called our flop bet, right? And we have a rough idea of what it would look like pre-flop as well. So if we parlay those two things and then we take in consideration that he was folding out all his diamond draws and his floats to our turn barrel, his range is basically pairs and missed flush draws. So hearts, like better heart combos, and pairs. And yeah, of course, he'll have quads sometimes, pocket sixes, both with pocket fours, and pocket sevens. Definitely a reasonable candidate that would have played this way for sure. I think almost all those are pure, meaning that he will have those combinations 100% of the time, making it much more likely that he does have those. So when we're considering to triple barrel in spots like this, it kind of goes back to the turn spot where I said we don't really want to continue barreling when we block the backdoor flush draw, because that makes it way less probable that our opponent has a backdoor flush draw, and it just makes a pretty poor bluff. So the same goes here. Like in my opinion, I don't think we want to continue bluffing when we have two hearts in our hand, because we're blocking so many of his potential flush draw candidates. So like ace jack of diamonds, king 10 of diamonds, ace 10 of diamonds. This, if we list them, like there's at least 12 different heart combinations that we're currently blocking. So that's quite a chunk of his range, because his range at this point, given the action, it's so condensed. So it represents a fair a, a large portion of his range, those missed flush draws. So what does that tell us? It tells us that he's probably more likely to have a pair here, even though there aren't that many pairs. But I think if I were to bluff here, I would pick a different candidate. I think we have a lot of stronger candidates to bluff with. Ideally, I would like to have two pair. It might sound weird that we would want to bluff with two pair, like if we have a four, a seven, like 8-7 for example, like blocking those pocket sevens are huge, and especially not having a heart in our hand. I think that would be key. Although those smaller heart doesn't really block that much because he would only call really with like ace deuce of heart or ace seven of hearts. That he's not flatting the cutoff versus an under the gun race with king seven of hearts or king deuce of hearts. Like he just doesn't have that many of those lower heart combination, but he does have a lot of the 10 and jack x heart combinations. So yeah, that's sort of how I would approach this spot. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so the first time I saw this hand, my first instinct was to keep bluffing. I think that it's a board that I think we get a lot of credit on this board usually. I think especially that their barrel is getting a lot of credit just based on population tendencies, right? I think that people are under bluffing the spot, to be honest, right? After leading and betting the turn, I think they're under bluffing the spot a lot, especially close to a final table, especially against somebody who has a very big stack that could actually hurt you, right? So I think that if you were to bluff, as far as just looking at it from that point of view, I think it's pretty attractive spot because of all those factors. And I also think that they're under hero calling and you lose motherfuckers' shoes, right? Like if there's a spot where people are hero folding, it's this one. It's in this kind of texture and it's in this kind of like stage of the tournament, right? Where we're kind of close to the final table. There's some ICM implications. But after hearing you talk about it, which I agree with everything you said, and thinking about it a little deeper, I did want to mention that because I think that that should be used, that kind of like mindset should be used towards any spot that looks similar to this that we might want to think about bluffing, right, in the future. But after hearing your train of thought, right, I just think that we don't have enough clarity here, man. I think that when all his nutted hands kind of played the same way, I think that we could also run into it very easily. And I think that, like you were saying, I think his range on the turn is pretty strong in general. I think that he in the specific, he's a pretty sticky player. I think he's pretty tough to play with, especially out of position. Um, but even him, I don't think that he's calling with ace queen twice or kind of making some type of fancy double float hand. So for that reason, yeah, I think that our hand already did what it was supposed to, which was the second barrel on the turn. We realized our equity. We got to fold whatever we were targeting already on the turn. And if he continues, I think based on everything you said and based on the fact that I don't have enough clarity, I think like a disciplined shutdown is probably the best play here, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's
But I don't
probably
see myself. I can't tell you that I see myself shutting down every time here.
no,
Because of the reasons I mentioned.
I
And
believe
yeah,
you.
I'm also I'm also bluffing a lot more than the rest. But I think I have valid points, to continue bluffing, and that's why I wanted to mention them. And I'm curious to see if you agree with them. About the spot being under bluffed, about the spot being under hero called, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we sort of should ask ourselves, like, sure, obviously we were worried about running into it, but that's not that many combos. There's there's the sevens, there's the fours, there's the pocket sixes, but that's it, right? Like those are his only stab calls, and then yeah, ace six, but ace six suited, but I don't know, I don't really see him flatting that pre-flop to be honest, and I think he three bets it if anything. So yeah, with that being said, then he's gonna have a lot more pocket eights to pocket aces, and a lot of those aces, kings, and queens are actually slow playing here pre-flop, and that's just to protect our flatting range when we're facing a 20 big blind open, and especially with the stacks behind him. With 220 or 120 and one 22 big blind stack behind him, and like me, who could potentially take, squeeze the spot, or just invite me in the pot and then play a pot in position, three-way, pretty shallow. So it's going to be easy enough for him to stack NASA anyway. If he has pocket aces, pocket kings, he's not that worried about protection. So I can definitely see him having those hands. But as far as queens and jacks, I think those are pretty clear get-ins. So if we exclude those hands most of the time, I would say his range are quite likely to be aces, kings, tens, nines, eights, and then the sevens, the sixes, the fours. Those aren't that many, and then pocket fives, of course. Those really aren't that many combinations. So he has a lot more. Whenever there's, cards on the board, there's a lot less likelihood that our opponent has any connectivity there. Like there's a lot of they're blocking, the board is blocking the range that we're worried about. So that's a positive for us. So the point I was trying to make here is, when we shove here, can we expect to get aces and kings? Aces and kings and pocket nines and pocket tens is basically the same hand here, meaning that we were never value betting worse than trips here, right? I think we can agree to that. So, and neither of those combos are interfering with our bluffing range, and that's also important to keep in mind. But do you think we can realistically get any of those combos to fold if we're shoving the river here?
I do think that we could. I think that I'm not sure, what your perceived image is in this spot, but I do think we could make those fold some of the time. But at the same time, it's just not that attractive to attack like that strong of a range. I mean, in nowadays where everybody's capable of making a big hero call, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, but when I'm bluffing here, I don't want to be trying to make somebody fold aces. Like, that doesn't seem too attractive for me, Do I think they fold some of the time? Yes. But do I want to try to be in that spot where, like, I want to make aces fold? No. So, like, I think, like I said, I think at the first view, I was like, yeah, probably continue barreling here because of the reasons I mentioned previously. But now, after breaking it down like this, I think that, yeah, it's just not that attractive to try to get those hands to fold. And it doesn't even guarantee me that it's going to fold something like eights, nines, and tens. I know it's because, like you said, it's basically the same exact hand, right? So, yeah, I'm just trying to bluff too strong of a range that also includes some nutted hands, right? Like the fours, the sevens, and the random a6 of spades that he didn't 3-bet pre. So for that reason, I think, yeah, like I was saying before, I think optimally in this specific scenario, I think that your check is probably the optimal line, Not to mention that winning the pot sure puts you in a great position, but losing it when you bluff is like a disaster. Now all of a sudden you're like, competing with the other short stacks when right now you're in great position to kind of cruise to the final table. So I wouldn't really risk that in a situation where I don't have enough clarity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we've all been there when we're bluffed it off in this spot, and then we've asked ourselves straight after, like, oh shit, this is what I'm left with now. And then you got to completely shift your game plan, because it's easy to get sort of cocky and like overconfident when you have 3x everyone else at the table and you're close to the final table and you're like kind of cruising. It's a lot easier to pull the trigger then, knowing that you'll still be in the tournament. But then that can mean that you have to completely shift your game, and like your future EV, meaning the hands that you'll be able to play in the future are going to suffer because you don't have that comfortability anymore. You don't have that buffer. You can't afford to lose a pot. So you're constantly like putting your tournament life in danger every time you wanna play a pot, basically. So yeah, So I checked here and he bet half or 80% on pot.
So probably a very good shutdown.
Probably, yeah. What are you? What about check shoving the river
Ooh,
there? Now we're
now,
talking.
now we're taking it to my side of town, baby.
Yeah, I mean,
Now we're taking to the streets. Yeah, I'd much rather do that than like shove myself. Like I much rather do that. But honestly, man, like being disciplined there is just it's just optimal in general. I mean, you kind of want to get fancy sometimes and stuff like that, but in poker, the key to really crushing poker is like crushing the spots that we see a lot of clarity in, and really mastering those and not being too creative when you don't see enough clarity, especially when you don't have like the right reasons to do so. So I think, yeah, I think it's a pretty good advice, to whoever's watching.
yeah, I mean, shoving there is a bit of a disaster, I think, when he bets because I would expect him to check back all his ace high flush draws. So if we exclude that from his betting range, then and he shouldn't like value bet pocket eights or pocket nines or pocket tens anymore, even aces and kings. I don't know. So I think it's very nutted, or he'll have like the odd, nine eight of hearts. Like that's the only real combination I can think of that would bet the river after we check. Anyway, let's move on to the next spot.
Perfect.
So here, this is sort of the board that you were talking about earlier, where you like to lead. Obviously, this is a little bit different because it's a heads-up pot. I think I like the lead a lot better in multi-way pots because people are kind of forced to play tighter. Like in the previous spot, for example, NASA has to worry about the cutoff, because he's not closing the action anymore. So there's no way NASA can float very wide there. Like when I lead, like he has to basically pitch like hands as strong as ace queen, ace king, because he's just sandwiched in between two players, and that's just sort of the dynamic that's going on there. Whereas heads up, you don't really have that, and you see people float pretty wide. So I don't think the donk is as effective. But that being said, I still think there's definitely room for it. But going back to the end, it all depends on the who has the range advantage and who has the nut advantage, because that's ultimately what decides how much money are we able to put in the pot and at what frequency. So if you have to keep those things in mind, then it becomes a lot easier. But obviously you need to know who has the range advantage. But just thinking about the pre-flop ranges and how they interact with the flop will sort of tell you that, or at least guide you in the right direction. So you like
Yeah,
that?
I don't really see myself leading with this specific hand in this spot too often. I think that, um, yeah, sure, we definitely have the range advantage and whatever you want, but I think that I think that they're gonna play pretty passively, like behind us, right? I think that many good situations come in later streets where we could still have a chance to bluff, effectively. So for that reason, yeah, I don't think that we want to start leading every time we have range advantage either. And I also agree with what you said that we get more credit from our leads when they're multi-way pots. So like if this was multi-way and we kind of want to lead this hand some of the time, like it starts making a lot more sense. But heads up, yeah, I think being able to win this hand in future streets becomes like not a necessary lead for any reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I do check, and not too surprised to see him check behind. And I would imagine he's doing so because of what we just mentioned, that he realizes that this is a spot where the big blind actually has a lot of playability and a lot of stronger hands. Like we have the nuts, which the low jack doesn't. So therefore, I can see him pot controlling here a fair bit, even with hands as strong as aces and kings, because those hands don't really interact with the board at all, and they're not really worried too much about protection, and they can get in a lot of trouble if they start betting here and getting check raised and don't really know where they're at. or even if they bet and get called and the turn is like a six or an eight or a three. Like there's so many bad cards, or the board pairs. There's so many bad cards for those type of hands. So I think there's a lot more value from the imposition spots to just pot control with those hands and rather induce some bluffs on the turn.
Oh yeah, definitely agree with that. I think that the imposition player here, it's usually gonna have a lot of checks on this flop, right? Like I mean, the way the game is being played nowadays, this is the exact flop that the big line loves to check raise, you know, with all sorts of hands, and kind of like in this situation, in this stage of the tournament, and we're still in the same stage of the tournament, yes, right?
Yes, similar.
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
don't. It's like you said. I think we find more benefits from checking back and kind of inducing with something like aces and kings, rather than betting and being like playing that guessing game, right? And also, yeah, I think that is what I was saying. You know, that now the situation comes up where, from your perspective, you start having an easy bet here. You know, and he's gonna have to respond pretty transparent in general.
yeah. I think we have a mandatory bet here. Uh, Not only because we have the range advantage, but because of our particular holding here. Like we have a hand that has a lot of equity, a lot of draws, but we have no showdown value whatsoever. Like basically, like currently we have Jack high, so we can't really check call here and hope to have the best hand or hope to show down, because we're just gonna get bluffed, either bluffed off, or we're not gonna get value from our hand. Um, so I think we definitely want to take control here, and given that he checked behind, like even if he has aces or kings now, like he's forced to fold, right? Because how can he continue with those hands when he has zero chance of improving on the river, and meanwhile
I mean,
we have all the nuts.
yeah, sorry to cut you off, Martin. I wouldn't say that they're kind of forced to fold right away. You know, I think that some of the time they kind of want to keep you honest. But yes, anything that's not like as strong as aces and kings, like I said, I think that he has a very, very tight continuum range in general, you know. So, yeah, I just see way more benefits. And it's just like a clear bet. I don't think there's much more to talk about in that sense.
Yeah, and yeah, we're also blocking both flush draws with a jack and a nine, jack of spades and the nine of diamonds in our hands. And it might not see that significant because obviously we don't have a flush draw, but it just blocks a lot of hands that he can continue with, and he's more likely to have the ace jack of hearts, or the ace nine of hearts or the king nine of hearts. Like the king nine is a straight draw, so he's not folding that. But and likewise ace nine. But yeah, just having the diamonds and the jack and the spades gives us a lot more playability on the river as well. Because if a spade peels off, one, our opponent is less likely to have a flush. But two, we can also represent the flush by continuing to betting, and that's a pretty strong argument for betting as well. So here we are again, back in a sort of tough spot where we have to ask ourselves: do we want to continue betting, or do we want to give up? I was gonna ask the chat if see what they think, but since we seem to be on a bit of a delay, that might take a while. So I'll just go ahead and ask you, Farid. What do you reckon this spot? Is this a better bluff candidate compared to the?
Like you did, right, with the Jack ten of hearts. But in this spot, I mean, I think I find myself betting here pretty much like 100% of the time that I bet this turn, and this is the river. I must, in my opinion, I must follow through with the second barrel. You know, I think that this turn opening up a flush draw now widens up his continuing range, because even though we block some flush draws with the nine of diamonds, I think that his most natural continues on this turn are, like I said, I mean, sometimes kings and queens that want to keep you honest. Sometimes like a spade draw that decided to check back the flop. Sometimes a lot of diamond draws, right, that now picked up equity. And now the problem with a lot of those, you might say that some of them are the nut flush draws, which now made top pair, right? But I think it's one of those spots where, like, yeah, I just think we have such a big range advantage, and we're attacking like the exact range that I want to attack when it comes to kind of like bluffing this spot. I'm attacking a pretty cap range, and in general is pretty weak to begin with, right? And for that reason, me having all the strong hands in my range, him being very very capped, and the river being a total brick, which actually the ace, I feel like gives our bluff a lot more credibility. Like I think I might rather bluff this ace than like a three of hearts, for example. Like that's how good I think this card is to continue bluffing. And I could be right, I could be wrong, but to be honest, from my experience, um, I experienced a lot of success with this type of run out in this type of scenario with this type of bluff. I think that sizing is pretty important. I would bet pretty much as big as possible. Because like you said, when we have such a big range advantage, you could kind of bet as big as you want. I think that there's no limits to how much money you want to start shoving into the flop. So it starts becoming more of like a personal strategy. Like what type of sizing is your strategy using here with the nutted hands? But yeah, I think for me it looks like a mandatory bluff, and if you didn't choose to do so, or if you feel like you disagree, I mean, I'm interested to hear your opinions on why you might disagree with that. Or what you think of like my breakdown of the spot.
Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting. I have a different approach to the spot, but just before I'll break it down, like what sort of sizing would you use then here if you were to bet?
Um, one sec.
So we have
Yeah,
a
honestly, like I said, honestly, I would bet as big as possible, and I don't really, I wouldn't say it's not an option to actually like 3x pot shove in this scenario. Like I think to be honest, I'm probably shoving here, but I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to. I just think that my image and my approach to the game kind of wants to be shoving here, because if there's a type of image or player that people are hero calling this river, it's probably me. So like I wouldn't say that you're supposed to use the same sizing that I am, because obviously we have different images. I mean, it's normal, right? Like I think we have the same understanding of the game, but people kind of approach us a little differently. So I'm probably shoving myself, but I think, yeah, I think minimum pot and probably something like an overbet seems pretty nice, and just kind of like attacking like the nut flush draws. I don't think that he has many straights. I don't think that he has many sets, besides eights. But I think eights probably bets the flop anyway. So yeah, I just think I'm attacking like the perfect range, and for that reason, I kind of want to go as big as possible. I think that I just want to use a sizing where queens and jacks is never even thinking about calling, and for that reason, I think that the big sizing is pretty much optimal here. But once again, I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, I like if you're betting here. I like that sizing that you just recommended. Just to put pressure, I mean queens and jacks. I don't think ever considering calling. But even like a hand like two pairs here would and a set would be kind of grossed out if you were to shove your 3x pot as close to the final table. So yeah, I definitely think it would go through a lot. The reason I don't like the well, first let's see. Sid said that he would check and give up. He says he could be having a six of spades, pocket sixes, and pocket sevens. Yeah, so I'll be too worried that he has a six here. I think he has more sixes than we realize. Like he would realistically play pocket sixes this way, a six suited, king six suited, 6-5 suited, 7-6 suited. So that's a fair amount of combos that he could have. So obviously, when we're bluffing and we're using a really big size, we don't want him to have that many snap calls, and all those hands are easy snap calls, obviously, because they're all the nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, we in the previous spot, which was also like a low jack open, right? We agreed that like those 6-7 suiteds and 5-6 suiteds are probably not too much in the range, right? So now it's like sixes and 8-6 suited, and that's why I like it even more, because I think that the ranges in this stage of the tournament are adjusted in a way where there's not as many sixes as you probably given them credit to have, you know. So I think that if you were to think that king six, queen six suited are in the range 5, 6, 7, 6 suited, then all of a sudden the bluff starts becoming a lot less attractive.
Hmm.
But I thought we broke it down the previous hand to where like it's not that attractive to open those hands in this specific situation. So for that reason, I think that in general they have a lot more sixes than we think. But in this specific scenario, I don't think they have as many sixes as you think, you know?
Hmm.
So I could be wrong. Like I said, I mean, these are like my humble opinions. Like I'm not saying that I'm right by any means, but I like to think like I approach the spot pretty correctly. And like I said, I've seen a lot of success from it. But obviously, once in a while, you get snap called and you know you're on your bike. But welcome to the streets, baby. That's what happens in the streets.
Yeah, I agree. Like he probably doesn't have that many 6-5 suited, 7-6 suited. Like it's a little bit loose of an open, especially at this stage of the tournament. I think this spot is a little bit different because where everyone's a lot deeper. So those hands goes up a lot in value when you're deeper and you're not too worried about reshoves. Like the only guy who can reshove basically is the button. Everyone else has way too much. He would either get three bet or flatted. Um, but yeah, that being said, I don't know if he's opening those 100%. So I agree with you there that he probably doesn't have that many sixes. But I would still be kind of concerned that he does. Just the way that the hand breakdown or went down, because I think he folds or proceeds like quite tight on the turn on this scary board. But the other thing, probably the stronger argument for checking, in my opinion, is that our blockers, while were great on the turn, they're actually pretty bad by the river because we're blocking a lot of the autofolds. So like a lot of the nines that would have played this way, the straight draws, the spades, the diamonds, like a lot of hands that he would play this way and get to the turn with and definitely call the turn. We're blocking those, so I just don't think we're gonna generate that many folds. And then I don't know if he's calling pocket jacks on the turn, um, probably, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting spot, you know. But that's my view on it. You know, that's kind of how I attack it. Sure, I run into 6x some of the time. Everything else folds pretty much every time, and like, and it's also okay to shut down. Like, I don't think it's a big deal at all. Like, I really don't. But I think that when I'm attacking such a weak range, where in my opinion is a lot more capped than like you probably giving it credit to be. You know, I think that sure sixes checks back a lot, but he also c bets some of the time for sure. I mean, because usually 6x, especially 6x of spades. I mean, it could check back sometimes, right? But hands that you want to check back here, you check back because you're gonna have trouble with continuing versus a check raise or something, right? And obviously to induce some of the time too, but in general, those hands tend to see bet a lot more than check back, and for that reason, I think that the range kind of looks like what I assigned it on the turn to be, rather than as many 6x's that you're probably thinking. But like I said, man, I could be completely wrong, and I'm just basing it kind of on my personal experience because it's a spot that doesn't come up too often where I could say that I'm right or you're right or like like I'm open to be convinced otherwise. I'm just saying that's how I approach it, and I've been very successful in this scenario. Pretty much, just high success rate basically. And I think it's just about picking the right sizing. If you are gonna bluff, I always say like if I'm gonna commit to the bluff, I'm either gonna bluff like a man, or I'm gonna kind of shut down. I don't do the in between half pot bet or like I either let's do this or okay I give up. So yeah, I think that in 2021, to be honest, I think that in the highest stakes, this is kind of what needs to happen for our bluffs to be, a lot more effective.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sid's saying, will you ever consider quarter potting just to target some king highs with spades to fold? And obviously that makes for a much cheaper bluff. I think the problem with that is that he will have um, a lot of easy calls that way. Like he will have some ace highs with a flush draw, that obviously easy calls now, and might struggle or should struggle to call our all-in bet because now he's blocking a lot of the flush draws. That makes it a pretty bad hand to call with. If he were to have something like um, ace king of spades, ace king of diamonds, or any of those. But yeah, what do you think about that approach for it? Like, do you think we can get away with block betting here and getting a cheap call? Like, that the thing is, like, we could even get called by those hands if we're block betting here, because you will realize that I mean, good players today, they realize the pot odds they need to call, and if you're starting to bet too small, they will call with a much wider range than if you were betting big, because it's just simple math. Like when
Yeah,
we call
I
a small
think
bet, we don't
that
need to be good that often.
I think it's a valid point for sure. I think it's definitely a valid point. I think it's a good. I always like when people think in creative ways. And kind of like it's a good way to start experimenting things and trying to find good reasonings for doing what we do. I think that's the key to poker. Doing what we do for the right reasons. But I think that attacking a king high flush draw is too specific of a range, and it also opens the doors to like be bluff raised. If he has something like king nine of spades, for example, he might take the spot and like turn it into a bluff. I'm not saying that they will, but they could. When you kind of like donk a quarter pot here, because your range kind of looks like two pair, it kind of looks like ace x maybe some of the time. And for that reason, if they were to turn a sizing into a bluff raise, it will probably be a quarter pot size. But I also think that like the hands that I was describing, like queens and jacks, that might call the turn to keep you honest, now are getting like decent pot odds to kind of like you said, pick up a cheap bluff. So for that reason, I think that it's a good observation, but I don't really like it, to be honest.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is, if you're happen to play versus a player like a less experienced player who's not really familiar with the pot out concept and like realizing how often he needs to be good, and I think this is especially true when we play live poker and it's not as easy to see how big we're betting, or our opponent are betting, because the pot is just splashed and like you don't really remember. But online, obviously, you get everything presented to you in the slide in the finest details. But I see live, uh, it's not as easy to know exactly how what percentage of the pot your bet's representing. So you can get away with a lot of more stuff live, and especially versus inexperienced players that don't realize that if I'm betting a quarter pot, he only needs to be good a fraction of the time, as opposed to if I'm betting, if I'm over betting the pot. Like, it's a huge difference. So if you get in that scenario, then it makes more sense to bet small, and that's sort of where small ball and the small ball concept comes from. You're sort of exploiting your opponent's tendencies by not defending enough, by not calling enough. So yeah, if you get a player like that, then I think you can get away with using a much smaller size with a similar result, and that's obviously great when we're bluffing.
No, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think it's player dependent, but it comes back to the concept, of like when you have, max range advantage and you're attacking a pretty weak cap range in general, you kind of just want to go as big as possible so that many hands that cause certain sizing are now folding every time. So, I mean, that's kind of like the way I approach it. And like I said, I don't think I'm ready to change that yet because I've seen a lot of success from it. So, I think the main key here is to see our analysis, right? Like for people watching, for example, or even for us, right? Like I see your point of view, I see my point of view, I kind of compare. I have both plays in my playbook, and then like decide what I want to do in the situation. I think that's what's really it's about, but it's doing things for the right reasons. And as long as you're doing that, then your game is constantly gonna keep improving for sure. So kind of like looking for the right little details to do what you do. I think yeah, I think it's a pretty good advice, in these type of complex situations.
Yeah. So when we're betting, when we're facing a 25%, like a quarter pot bet here, we only need to be good 16% of time. And that's not a lot. So, if our opponent has at least some bluffs in his range, it's probably justifiable to call just given the math, like simple math. But if our opponent is betting pot, then we need to be good 33% of the time. So we need to be good twice as many times as if he's betting quarter pot. And if he's betting 200% of pot, we need to be good 40% of the time. So it just keeps increasing. Like the bigger we bet, and the same goes for when we're bluffing. Like when we're bluffing and we use a big size, our bluff has to work way more often than if we're using a smaller size. And that's why block betting a small ball can be so effective, especially if you're up against players who not defending properly or defending wide enough.
For sure, for sure. Pretty interesting the math behind it.
Yeah,
And so you did check, right?
I did check and I got punished for it. So our
Yeah, you
opponent,
should you should have you should have bet a fourth like our boy said in the chat, man.
yeah, I should have, yeah, yeah, it
You
probably
already knew what he had.
it definitely would have worked, yeah, with this combo especially.
Yeah, see, like that's the problem with checking. Like me checking here and losing to this. I mean, it just it doesn't feel too good. But at the same time, man, it's like I said, you kind of like you stick to your game plan for your reasons, and as long as it makes sense to you, and then it's perfectly fine. And I think that one thing that is very important nowadays is discipline, man. Being able to have that discipline shutdown. Where we don't see enough clarity, like we're saying, right? So yeah, even though I would have done the complete opposite here, I think there's something to say about your discipline and why it gets you to so many final tables a lot. Because I'm sure you would have busted some of the time in this spot for sure. We can't really be too results oriented and see that the guy had king high and all of a sudden bash our head because of that. Or like be too hard on ourselves, especially like in the middle of the tournament because this could create some frustration. Like you let go of like a decent pot here and you lose a little bit of momentum. Like it could affect your situation in the tournament for sure, especially when you lose versus a hand that you should have been attacking the whole time. But is keeping a calm head and being disciplined enough to be like, okay, that was my game plan. We lost to this hand. It's all good. Let's on to the next hand and kind of like reset as fast as possible because I think in these stages of the tournament, a lot of emotions are in play. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
No, definitely. I mean, anytime you're deep in a tournament, whether it's online and especially live poker, man, it's so personal in a way because you're just sitting there and your opponents is straight across the table. Like online, it's like it doesn't feel as personal, but live, it's like yeah, it's battle. So yeah, it's a lot of
But
emotions.
I think our boy you lose motherfucker seems to take it a lot more personal than you might think.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. There's a lot of situations where it gets really personal online as well, and like people are chatting and stuff. But I think in general though, it's a lot more personal live, just because you see who you're playing against. But it all depends, depends on the dynamic
Yeah,
of the
I
table.
think it's kind of like person dependent. Like live, you always have these profiles that you three bet them twice, and they're like, next time you three bet me, I'm all in no matter what. And then you have different type of people who don't really care. So, but yeah, it's definitely you find a lot more personal styles when you're at the live tables.
Yeah. So since the reason I said for a quarter bet size or maybe a little bit more is because one, there's a chance he can fold because our jack high is never good here, and if he raises, it's an easy fold. And two, if we check here, we're simply giving up. Um, yeah, I mean it's interesting. The question is how do we balance that with our value bets? Do we have a small value bet here? Like we would have to bet a six for the same size, and it gets quite tricky to have multiple sizes, especially in a spot like this where we're not really looking to value bet that thinly. I think that's the key here. Like when we're betting, we're basically saying that we have a six or or a bluff, right? So there's either those two. So when we have a six, obviously it makes sense to go for max value by shoving. Excuse me. But when we're bluffing, we want to maximize our fold equity by putting max pressure on our opponent, which will have a lot of strongish hands that can easily call the smaller bet, the quarter size bet. Anyway, enough of this stand. Let's move on to the next one.
Move on to the next one. Finally, we have a hand.
Boom. All right. So yeah, we have some pre-flop action.
Now our hand doesn't look as good as it did when you opened the table.
Yeah, it's always like that. You look down at a really strong, or that's the thing when you play live, especially. Like, I don't know about you. Do you look at your cards as soon as you get them dealt, or do you wait till it's your turn?
It really depends. Like I don't really do the same thing every time. Sometimes I'll look at one and then kind of like look at the other one way later. Sometimes I look at them right away. Sometimes I never look at them to the end. Honestly, I mix it up. I mix it up a lot, man. It's not like I have a routine for when I look at my cards. It's all like depending on the vibe, on how adventurous I'm feeling. Different crazy thoughts that go through my mind at the live tables. But yeah, I have different approaches depending on the vibe.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever done that. Like not looked at my hand till it's over. I mean, maybe sometimes when you're short and you're shoving any two or you're chip leader on the bubble or something. Of course, yeah, it doesn't really matter. But I think those would be the only two scenarios.
No, like a lot of times. Not a lot of times, but very specific times. It might just look like a really good, for example, squeeze spot or like a really good 3-bet or 4-bet spot, and it's like, you know what, I'm not even going to look here because if I look at trash, I'm not going to do it. But I know that like it feels so right now that I'm not even going to look because I'm sure it's going to work. It's very specific times, but I would say I've done it way more often than probably most. And yeah, I think in general, I have a pretty good feel for those specific situations when they tend to work. But a lot of the times they call me and now I look down at 8 deuce off and it's like, how do I proceed, But fuck it, it's like part of the adventure too, because I could look down at a real hand too. And also when I don't look, they can't really get a read on me because I don't even know what I have. So how can you try to get a read on me, right? So I don't know, it's pretty interesting. A little wilder than most.
I like it. Yeah, so going back to the hand, pretty interesting spot. It's not I don't think it's that clear. Like it's hard to say if it's a clear call or fold. At a first glance, it looks pretty nasty, I think. But let's break it down. So the first thing we want to ask ourselves here is obviously what's our opponent's range look like, and then we can go from there. So we start with the big blind, right? So the big blind's facing a cutoff open and a big blind or button 3-bet. And I'm pretty short. I only have 21 big blinds behind. So my range will be fairly wide. And the big blind, knowing that, combined with a loose opening range from the cutoff, it makes it quite attractive for him to shove fairly wide. Like I don't think he will have many complete bluffs here, like complete air balls. Like I don't think he ever takes a hand like 6-5 suited and just like rips it in here. But he could have a hand like ace five suited, like those smaller ace-6 combinations, suited combinations that are play pretty well, and they have the nice blocker effect of blocking ace king and ace queen. So I could see that, but if I were to give him like a pretty tight and conservative range, I think it looks something like pocket nines, ace jack suited, ace queen off. I don't know if you agree with that range assessment or not.
Yeah, I think with these two positions, cutoff button, I would probably say like maybe even something like sevens and eights some of the time. Like, yeah, the point is that I think I'm not too worried when the big line shoves with Jax. I think it's a clear like call. I don't think that. No, I wouldn't be shocked if he has like a better hand, but yeah, he just shoves a lot of hands that we got completely crushed. For the right reasons, right? Because like you said, I think the cutoff is opening. His natural range, which is pretty wide to begin with. We're three betting kind of wide here, of course, and for that reason, yeah, like you said, pretty attractive, and he picks up a lot when he gets through, right? And so yeah, I think ace X suited for sure, ace queens, even something like ace ten, ace jack some of the time, king queen, right? King queen suited, I think shove some of the time here, um, those type of hands, and then pairs, right? Like I think probably sevens plus. It might be something like you're saying, maybe nines plus, right? But still a few of them that we got completely crushed, and then so yeah, I think this spot only becomes very, very interesting when this happens, right? Like I think that we both agree that when the big line shoves and the cutoff folds, we snap call every time, right? So
Yeah, easy.
now this, yeah, this looks kind of nasty, man. It looks, ooh, pretty interesting.
Yeah, the trick in these like three-way all-ins because it's hard to know. Like you need quite a lot more equity than you do when, or I mean, yes and no. Like we're getting a better price for one. Like if you look at the pot at this point and how much we've put in so far. But anyway, so let's talk about the cutoffs range then. So if we're estimating that the big blind is shoving, or you said sevens as in nines. I can get behind sevens just for the reason that you said that he's picking up so much when it gets through, and it should get through a fair amount. And even with sevens, like he's not like drawing dead by any means when we get called. Like it's going to be a flip a fair amount of time. So let's say he has sevens and ace queen off, ace jack suited. So what does the cutoff have here, given the action? I think he's aware of the dynamic that the big blind is going to be probably wider than you would think, just because of the fact that he's picking up so much. Like sure he's taking a big risk here, risking his whole stack, but when it works, it's a very profitable spot for him to take. So if he's aware of that dynamic, I think he would get in. I mean, he would have to be pretty tight because he also has me to worry about, of course. Like I'll still have a lot of strong hands that I'll snap off here. So I think his range looks something like ace king, pocket tens. I don't know if he goes with nines. I think that would be a little bit crazy, like a little bit loose. But I think tens for sure. Um, what do
Is
you?
this fine? Is this final table, by the way?
No, it's not final table. So there's no.
It's not
I mean,
final table.
there's
Okay.
ICM implications because this got to be final two tables, right? It was seven handed.
Yeah, yeah. You're six-handed, I think. Oh no, seven-handed. Okay. Um, Yeah, I think that definitely he never folds tens, for sure not. I think that even nines, I'm inclined to say that he goes with some percentage of the time, right? But definitely not looser than that. And nines probably folds like way more than it calls, right? Because like you said, he still has you to worry about. But tens is a very easy get in here because of our breakdown, right? Like it's just correct to get it in here with tens, understanding that you still have a lot of hands crushed. But yeah, like throughout my career, I've been in the spot a lot, and I've never seemed to make the right decision. Like when I call, I lose. When I fold, I would have won a huge pot every time. And in my case, it's usually with tens. With tens in the spot, which I assume that you're also like me, folding most of the time. So I think that because I'm folding most of the time tens, I think that jacks now becomes like pretty much the toughest spot possible um, in this scenario. I think that if the positions were earlier, I think we still kind of have to fold jacks. Like if it was under the gun one, we're still kind of folding pretty easily. But in this scenario, jacks becomes kind of like that border. Or I don't know if you're ever considering going with tens also, or you agree with what I'm saying.
I mean, tens would be extremely close. I think jacks. I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say what I do here, but yeah, I think tens is very marginal in this spot, just because if we're estimating that the cutoffs range is tens plus, then we're not. Well, for one, we're blocking pocket tens, so he's less likely to have tens as well. But even if he does, it's not that good for us because that means that we're potentially drawing dead if the button or the big blind has an overpair, and also the big blind is kind of free rolling if he has ace king or ace queen because we can't improve, and if he improves, he triples up. So I think it's just that those when we're in such like marginal spots that one pip really matters. Like it might seem that we're nitpicking here, like jacks and tens, like it's really not that big of a difference, but I think it's a pretty significant difference here because we don't have the benefit of potentially dominating at least one of our opponent. But let's break down the spot as we would off the table. Obviously, this was in game, so I had to make up a decision here. But this is how I would look at it when I'm trying to figure out if I should call here or fold here in hindsight. So the software I use here is called Equilab, and it's a free tool. Like you can download it online. It's very intuitive, and it's not as advanced as like some of the other solvers like PioSolver or Monk or any of those. But anyway, we'll guide you through it and show you how to use it. So what we want to do here is we want to input all of the ranges that we just mentioned. So if we're starting with the big blinds range, I mean, we can click it here, just fill it in like this, or we can just input it here. That's probably easier. So we said nines, or should we go with your range for it? So sevens plus.
Maybe you should go in the middle, you know, eights.
All right. All right, I was going on my keyboard. I can't find the plus sign. All right, we got to do it this way then. So yeah, eights plus. Ace queen off. Kind of like this. What do you think? King queen suited. Would he shove that?
I think it looks like a pretty attractive hand to do so.
Yeah. And let's give him one of the ace five suited. That's the one I see a lot. People like to use the ace five suited particularly because it has that wheel draw benefit.
Yeah, I think I would put maybe even include like ace four suited. I never really see ace three, but like ace four and ace five, definitely see with some percentage. But you could include it, you could not. But I think in these tournaments, definitely see some percentage of ace four and ace five suited. Like you know, the 5Ks and the highest stakes in general play pretty aggressively here. You know, so yeah, I think this looks like a pretty spot on range.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would look a lot different, I would say, if it was a live 1K in Vegas, or like the tournament you're about to play tomorrow. So yeah, it's
for sure.
Player dependent and tournament dependent.
Yeah, in the tournament I'm about to play tomorrow, I just hope I'm not in the spot with 10 left because it's gonna be a tough one.
All right.
But yeah, I think versus a lot of people, you could just easily fold here, right? That's the beauty of live poker. Like you actually see the profile. So, but yeah, go ahead. So now you're looking at the cutoffs range, right?
Yeah. And what would we say? Tens, ace king plus. Do we agree? It's pretty nitty, but I think it's a fair assumption. So I mean, it'd be kind of crazy to flick.
Yeah, I think maybe like. Maybe ace queen suited only, but I'm not sure that they're calling like every time they're. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me.
All right, let's keep it like this, and then we just pick our hand, which is pocket jacks. So now we've implemented all the ranges, and then we just click on this green little button here that will evaluate our equity versus these ranges. And I mean, this we can let it run for a little bit, but it's pretty accurate already, I would say. So we can go ahead and stop it. We see we have 31%. a little over 31% versus both of these ranges combined. Not too surprisingly, the cutoffs range has the most equity with the and the strongest range, so that sort of makes sense, right? But we're actually ahead quite a bit versus the big blinds range. So now when we know how much equity we have versus these ranges, the second thing we want to do when deciding whether to call or fold is to look at the pot odds, right? So remember, or we can close this now. So now we're pulling up our calculator, and yeah, it's a little bit tricky because we shouldn't look at the full pot.
Welcome to Martin's lab.
It's very old school.
Welcome to Martin's lab.
So yeah, we shouldn't look at the whole pot because we can't win the whole pot because we only have where both of our opponents has us covered. So let's just do this rather. Let's just go back and see. So we have let's say 800k, so we can win 800 times 3, right? So that's 2.4 million plus the blind, the antes and the small blind, which is another 40k. Yeah, that is. Yeah. Wait, what do I do now? So 2400 plus. Oh, I must do something else. Plus 40. So yeah, and now we need to call 630. $630 to win 24 for it. Actually, so that gives us 25.8, and then we just multiply this with 100 to get the percentage. So 25.8, or is it 26% we need, and depending on our expected ROI in the tournament and our edge over the field, I would say this needs to be slightly higher because this is purely break even, right? And this is also, bear in mind, this is assuming that we've nailed both of our opponent's ranges. So if any of our assessments are wrong, if the big blind, for example, never has ace-5 or ace-4 suited, if those combinations gets eliminated from his range, and let's say that the cutoff only has jacks and ace-king, this would be, I mean, this number would stay the same, but our equity in the hand would be very different. So I would say it's better to proceed with caution here and give yourself a little buffer. So I'll probably need like at least 27% here to make the call. But as we remember, in Equilab, when we looked at Equilab, we had over 31% versus both of these guys. So it's a pretty clear-cut call, which might not look like it at first glance, but now when we've sort of broken it down, we realize that we don't actually need that much equity in order to call. We only need 27%, which isn't a ton, and I mean, we have the fourth best hand possible, so yeah, fairly straightforward call once we've broken it down, but yeah, not an easy one to make in play.
Pretty interesting, man. Pretty interesting one.
Let's see if I got it right. Yeah. So what do you think they have?
Ooh.
I mean, you know, I get third in tournament.
No, I know you won the hand, but I have no idea what they have. I'm gonna say ace king, ace king.
Oh wow, we get the full sweat. Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay,
pretty good.
ace king intense.
Pretty good results, you know. Like we dominated the cutoff, and we're flipping versus the big blind. but we're flipping for to triple up our stack. So pretty good spot.
Yeah, pretty
Although
amazing spot to be in.
yeah. All right, I think we'll wrap up the review there. I think we've been going for quite some time, and do you have do you have anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, not really, man. Giving everybody good vibes, you know. Stay positive mindset wherever you guys are at, and to the top, you know. Always to the top, always looking up, never down, man. I was looking at the mountains, you know, and it's like just feels like you know everybody belongs at the top of the mountain, man. You know, so I always wanna inspire people and you know kind of like push people towards being like the better version of themselves. You know, I think that nowadays, and this is not top poker related at all, but I think nowadays with all these high stressful times, I think you know many people are arguing or you know kind of like putting each other down or you know fighting for the wrong reasons, and I would just like to be a little more like to see a little more of like positivity going on, man. So yeah, I mean, just always positive, man, no matter what. And I think that in general, I think it's been a pretty rough time for poker players in general because it's been pretty aggressive, Martin. You know, it's been every week a new schedule. Like the volume is insane, the rake is pretty high. So I'm sure that you know a lot of people are not going through the easiest time. But like you know, you guys are not alone, and like it's never as bad as it seems. You know, like we go through big downswings all the time, and I think it's all how we handle it mentally. You know, and I think, like I said, staying with the good group of positive people and always striving to be the best version of yourself is what's gonna get you to the top. You know, whatever your top really is. So yeah, I'm always trying to talk about these things because I think, like I said, it's been a pretty rough patch. Even though poker's booming, online is kind of abusing a bit, is the way I see it. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. You know, because yeah, every week is like a new series, right? It's like nonstop.
Yeah, it might seem weird that we're complaining about this, but yeah, I don't think it's
No, I'm not really complaining. I'm just saying, you know, it's became a tough to beat system. You know, it's really what I'm saying. I know that the action is there, the volume is there. That's amazing, but it's a pretty aggressive system they're creating. You know, that's really what I mean.
yeah, the online sites definitely took advantage of the fact that a lot of countries were in strict lockdowns, and there really was no other outlet to go to the casino or to travel and play live poker. And so what they did basically, they added a bunch of online series, and there was uh, quite a hectic 2020, I would say. You know, there was the one online series ended, and then the few days later they would announce the next one, and it was even bigger and bigger. So it was hard to stay away, but at the same, because also you didn't have anything else to do. At least me, like I haven't played live poker since Aussie Millions in 20. Yeah, I guess 2020, but that was like right before the pandemic hit, like in February 2020.
Yeah,
And then once I got back to London, I basically haven't traveled for poker once since, and that was a year and a half ago now, 15 months. I haven't played a hand of live poker, so I'm really itching to get back. And I think my next live series will hopefully be the WSOP in October. Of course, very excited about that. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Hopefully, travel restrictions will be eased by that point, and we'll be good to go.
for sure, man. For sure, it's gonna be a great time, man. It's gonna be a good one. But yeah, man, you know, like the volume has been good in terms of we have a lot of options every day to play. But I think that we should also strive towards like having somewhat of balance. You know, like I think staying balanced. You know, taking some days off, like hanging out with your friends. I'm not saying you need to do this. I'm just saying it kind of seems like a healthy approach. You know, because I think that the online poker lifestyle is one that could kind of like consume you a lot. You know, so I think that being aware of this and making sure we have some type of balance, I think it's pretty important now that the like I said, every day is a new series, so like it's a lot, you know, it's a lot being thrown at us. We got to kind of like go at our pace, you know. For me, it's worked. You know, when I started, I was playing a bunch. Now I'm like very balanced, like only play when I feel like it. I'm not saying it's gonna work for everybody, but for me, it was too much at the beginning, and now I feel like this is what works, you know, like finding some type of balance. I see you started running a lot more. Like I think you're kind of like experiencing the same type of thing, right? Where you're like, okay, I need to play, but I also need to, you know, take care of myself, right? So I think it's just positive ways to look at the situation.
Yeah, I've always tried to have a balance between live and online. Like ever since my I started my career in poker, I've always played. I've at least strive to play like 50% live, 50% online, and just balancing the traveling and like the intense traveling and like the social aspect of the game with the online grind, and just you know closing my door to my office and just like playing a bunch of tables, like super fast pace, uh, very like high stakes and a lot of high pressure situations. uh, but yeah, obviously since the pandemic, like yeah, I haven't really had the outlet for the social aspect of the game, and that's what I miss the most, because I found, having only played online for so many months now and not really traveling and not like missing, I really miss that aspect of it. And I realized how important that's been over the years, to just being able to share your experience with other poker players, like face to face, and like actually see real people. Like all this clicking online, like it's driving you fucking insane, like after a while. Like you can't you can only do it for so long, but like when they keep adding series after series after series, and you can't leave because you can't travel, and you're not supposed to leave because you might get COVID, or like they lock you in basically. Like what else are you gonna do? That's the only only thing I know what to do. I'm a poker player, so the only option has been to play online. Unless I want to switch careers, and I think that's you hit me up last year and told me that you've started doing coaching, and I think that was a really good. It was really good timing for me, because I was quite fed up with online. I'd been playing online since basically Scoop last year in 2020, ever since the lockdown happened. I've just been playing series, online series after online series, and then when you told me that you've sort of branched out and like started exploring other things like coaching and sharing your experience and doing seminars and courses, it really caught my interest, and I started thinking to myself that like, okay, maybe I should do something like that too, because I was just so fed up with playing online poker and missing the aspect of face-to-face interaction. So I know like this isn't, it's it's not face-to-face, but it's the next best thing. Like I'm able to see you, we're having a real interaction. Sure, we're behind webcams or whatnot, but at least it brings a little bit of that human element back to me, and like I think it's been very important for my mental health.
I think that's an aspect that I really enjoy from coaching. You know, is the social aspect and being able to give back to the community, man. You know, like being able to give back to the game that we love, and like yeah, playing wasn't really filling me up too much. I felt like kind of like a lot of people needed my help in this way, and I felt like I could provide it. So I started experimenting with it, and to be honest, nothing but great things out of it. You know, I think that when you get into things for the right reasons with the right intentions, like I never really did it like trying to get rich out of it, nothing. I just kind of wanted to give back to the community and like yeah, like have that social aspect because I felt like online I wasn't really doing anything for anybody. Like I was just what do you play online for? Kind of like just for the money. Now I see it more like what I said at the beginning, like a tool for practice is the way I view online poker. It's like for me personally, it's never gonna define who I am. I'm not an online poker player. That's not what I'm about. But it's an amazing tool to take my game to the practice fields, you know, and by approaching it that way and by changing that approach, I by nature started winning a lot more, man. Like I started, you know, winning a lot of tournaments and because I was just kind of like taking off the pressure from the result. I was like, I'm just in practice. Like no matter what happens, I don't really care, you know. And once you start doing that, you get a lot better. You see a lot more clear, and you also like you trust yourself a lot more to make the right decisions at the end because you're really not that phased by the pressure of the situation, right? So um, I don't know if it's gonna be good advice for everybody, but for me, it's been a great way to look at it, you know, and it's also given me the opportunity to have a better balanced life, you know, where like I could sit out a tournament online no matter how big the guarantee is, because I have other priorities too, you know. So yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good advice to anybody who feels like they're a little burnt out or who feels like it's been a lot, you know, like because it has been a lot thrown at us, you know. So yeah, it's been a really good experience, man. The coaching thing, the social thing, the few courses that we did together was really cool because like you start off as a group of like coaches and students, and the students between themselves are a bunch of randoms, but at the end like everybody's just like friends. It's just like a group of friends with like similar likes, um, talk about life, talk about poker. I mean, what better, you know, what better thing to do on your off time? So it's been great, man. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, nothing but good things. Um, and yeah, going back to the importance of balance and having other things going on outside of poker, because if you 100% dedicated to poker, I mean, you can be dedicated, but if you only have poker that you care about and you don't have anything else on the side, when poker is tough, then your life is extremely tough because that is your life. But if you have other things, and that's where live poker comes into place, and the importance of community and having friends that are going through similar things that you can talk to, and you can support each other, like when you're doing well, when you're doing poorly, like whatever it is, it just gets so much easier than if you're having to battle through all this by yourself and don't have anyone to share either the ups or downs. It's just not as fun, and it can be very challenging.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. It's been a journey, man. It's been a journey. You know, I've really enjoyed this movie so far. It's been like a crazy movie. And I think that yeah, poker in general is just like a really good life university. You know, like you meet all types of people, you go through all types of things, all types of up and downs, and it's like um, it just gets you ready for like life. You know, like I think that poker, like you said, is very tough, but it's very rewarding if you accept the lessons that it teaches you. You know, so yeah, it's been pretty amazing. I don't know if maybe you want to take a couple questions from the chat and then we wrap it up or
Yeah,
whatever you want.
sounds good here. Um, Sid is saying, remember me, Farid, met in Venetian and Tampa. Sid.
Oh, Sid, how you doing, Sid?
uh,
Oh, I didn't know that was Sid in the chat. How you doing, Sid? You in Vegas, man? Where you at?
he's asking when the next session is, next webinar. Yeah, we need to schedule that, or I need to schedule that. I guess it's my channel. But yeah, we'll
Yeah,
definitely.
this is actually Marty's personal channel, but I'm happy to to join anytime. You know, Marty's my boy off the table, so happy to help anytime. Be here is something that I enjoy. But if you're in Vegas, Sid, hit me up and we'll kick it, man. We'll have a drink or something.
I'm sure he is. Jason's saying, can't wait. Just got here, can't wait for more content from Martin. Yeah, I'll keep you guys posted, and I'll write in the comment section. We're gonna upload this webinar on the channel, so you can go back and rewatch it. And for everyone who couldn't make it live, they can watch it as well. So I'll put in keep you guys posted in the comment section there on when the next video is gonna be, and the future of the channel, like what my plan is, and how often I'll post. But I'll try to keep it as regularly as possible. So like minimum once a week, you can expect a video from me.
It's amazing, man. And yeah, man, we're here to help. So anytime you want me to hop in, I'll be available, man. As long as I'm not at some final table somewhere, which hopefully I am.
Yeah,
Um,
well then we can talk about that after. Like we'll
then we could just go through that, man. We'll go through. We'll break down the crazy bluffs and the the crazy hero folds and whatever you want. Um, But yeah, man, it's been great. I don't know if you want to wrap it up,
Yeah,
or
let's
you had
wrap
a
it
couple
up.
final thoughts maybe that you wanted to tell Chad or whatever.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we've been going for almost 2 hours now, so I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Michael, one of my coaches, says, Martin Farid, thanks for a session. Martin Farid, best of luck. He also wish you luck in Vegas for the tournament. I was speaking to him this morning actually, and he said he's going to Vegas himself to play. He's gonna play a satellite for the big one, but he was also gonna play some side events at the win, and I think yeah somewhere else as well. But yeah, a lot of action going on this weekend in Vegas, so I'll be watching from the sidelines and incredibly jealous and itching to play myself. But yeah, at least it's good to know that live poker is back for real, and yeah, can't wait to play.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted, man. Hopefully, send you the trophy pick.
Yeah,
And
send me
no
some
matter what,
finance.
it's just no matter what exactly, man. I'm just having a good time, and that's all there is to it, man. Whatever happens after that is bonus. Once you approach it that way, all you could do is win. So yeah, man. I appreciate everybody for being here. Appreciate you, Martin, for inviting me. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we created some nice content for you guys. And yeah, we'll be in touch, my brother. All right, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Good luck
To the fuck, to the fucking top.
to the top.